Hi guys, by popular demand I'm doing a real cheeky little what's in my dance bag video ahead of show week this week at our dance school. The main bag that I have today is my big Adidas catch-all. I do have two other bags, but this is the main one that we'll be talking about today. As a teacher I will have obviously a lot more in terms of itinerary and in terms of equipment that I'll be bringing with me, but take these as some suggestions for those of you who are looking for inspirations for what to bring for the show week. So I've already pre-packed it to make sure it actually all fits, and it does just about fit. But just so you can see, I'm going to pull out all of my packs that I have in this bag, and then I'll very briefly explain what we've got going on in each one. Quickly talking about the main bag. In terms of loose items, we have some muscle tape in case of injuries while rehearsing, or if we need to strap anything up prior to being on stage. This will be great. I also have therapy ball for tightness within joints, and then we also have some TheraBands to help prevent against injury. So those are just loose in the bag. And then at the very end, in the ventilated pocket, I've included all of my dance shoes. So that includes flats, ballet flats, jazz flats, foot thongs, soft blocks, point shoes, and tap shoes. So I've got those all together in the bag separately. Moving on to what we have in the main bulk of the bag, I've got quite a few individual packets. Now, I wouldn't recommend everyone to bring something like this, but if you are a senior and you have point shoes specifically, having a small sewing kit would be really ideal. We've had a lot of instances where we've seen elastics or ribbons ripping off, and you just don't want to be in a situation where your elastic breaks in one of our rehearsals and you don't have anything to fix it with. So I would really recommend having a small sewing kit in your kit if you can. Obviously, our policy at our dance school is to come with your makeup done ready, but for example with our long days of rehearsals prior to the shows, we will be doing hours and hours and hours of prep. So in between that we have meals and we run around and we get hot and sweaty, etc. So it's really ideal to be able to bring your makeup with you. I don't have anything specific in here that's not been recommended before. I would really recommend a setting spray if you can get one, and some makeup remover as well, just in case we do have any accidents with food or anything of that such. So make sure you bring your makeup with you, would be great. Moving on, I then have my makeup appliances in a separate bag so that if there is any spillages of powder or anything, you don't get it all over your sponges and your makeup brushes. I also have eyelash curler, and a really good thing as well, which can be really helpful, is an antibacterial makeup brush spray. So hopefully we won't be sharing any appliances with friends. It's not particularly hygienic, but if you have to, for whatever reason, something like this can be really useful to use between usages. So we've got that, eyelash curler, and then a load of makeup brushes and sponges. And they're all kept in there nice and safe, separate from all the powders and creams. Moving on to hair. Surprisingly, my hair kit fits in here, and I bring probably more than the average person would. Just in case of any eventuality. I think being a teacher, it just makes it easier to know that you've got stuff on hand. So I'll go into this a bit more detail. So obviously hair ties are a key must-have. I tend to have them in blonde and brunette. I've got some brunette ones somewhere in here as well. Then a hairbrush. I just have a cheeky tangle teaser. It's super easy, can be packed away and doesn't take up too much space. I have a styling paste. I use the VO5 Surf Style paste, and that's really useful, especially if you're having to change hairstyles into something that's a bit less structured. For example, if you're having to tie your hair back into braids or into a high ponytail, it can be a bit more malleable and a bit more easy to use than a hairspray would be. So I keep that in there. Along similar similar lines as the gel. If you don't like creams, I use a spray as well, and that's really handy when it comes to plaits. I do have one small hairband. I tend to use this for me really when I'm doing my own makeup backstage. And then I have a small pouch here which contains some hairbands, but also all of my bobby pins, my grips, my hair nets for the ballet buns, and I also have a very, very small crochet hook which I use to pull kind of wayward strands of hair back into the hairstyles in case of it being a bit too messy before hairspraying it in. And I also include a very fine tooth comb to create that very attractive slicked back look for a really tight ballet bun. So they're all in there. Non-slip hair ties are brilliant, especially if you're wearing braids. We don't have many often in way of dancers that need braids, but we do have some in this show coming up. So non-slip braids, non-slip bands are great for the ends of plaits. And then just to finish that off, I do carry with me 2 different strengths of hairspray, strength 2 and strength 4 from Tresemme. I tend to do this because you have different styles of hair and then you have different hair types. So if someone has very, very thick hair, this one's much more useful. For someone with finer hair with more hair changes, a level 2 is probably more suitable so that we're not stuck with that real smart back look and then struggling to get into a new hairstyle afterwards. So I do my best to carry 2 types with me in my main kit. And I'm gonna swap it with my, I guess you could dub this the toiletry kit. Obviously this is something that I think most of you probably won't need, but there are some items in here that could become really useful. As a teacher, I like to have these to hand. So travel tissues, useful whenever you never think you need them until you really want them. I have a thermometer here. This is kind of harkens back to the days of the Pandemi Lovato. So I keep those in a bag just in case of any illness in students. Then we have some cotton buds. I don't particularly like these very often. I don't use them normally in my day-to-day life, but they're really handy to have in a dance kit, especially when it comes to tidying up makeup. If anything goes wrong, so much easier than wiping everything off and starting fresh, especially when we're in a rush backstage. Then I have cotton pads, really key for removing makeup or you know, tidying up any lines. Again, kind of like the cotton buds, but on a kind of a wider scale. So if we've got a major makeup change, these are really great. And also if there's a kind of a pause between rehearsals and you kind of want to have a bit of a refresh, these can be really useful. And along those lines, I also, again, I don't use these in day-to-day skincare, but having them on the go when we don't have bathrooms readily available for us backstage, some biodegradable facial cleansing wipes can be great to kind of pull off that excess makeup between stages of, you know, layering it on, and it can really help with preventing acne as well. Then I have a couple of facial towels, just like flannels, that can be used for sweat build-up. You know, we get very hot and sweaty under the hot lights on stage, so I don't tend to use these for like washing my face. These are more for, you know, personal hygiene after rehearsing on stage for an extended period of time. Deodorant is a must-have. I always recommend to all my students that they go with a solid bar deodorant. Obviously a lot of spray aerosol can ones are very popular, but when we're backstage we do have students that have you know, allergies or do have things like asthma, and we have to be really conscious of them. And obviously with things like hairspray being somewhat unavoidable, it's really great to be able to try and avoid spraying things where we can. So I would always recommend a hard stick deodorant. I also carry a hand sanitizer, a nail varnish remover for obvious reasons, and then I have this here which is a facial mist, just nice to freshen up, and it can also be used somewhat as a setting spray. It's a bit of a lazy setting spray. I tend to use this personally when I'm not backstage, before I've got my makeup on, perhaps I've been teaching for a while, it helps wake me up a little bit, so that's a bit of a teaching hack. And then the same with a lightweight water-based body spray, so it's not aerosol, it's not heavy perfume, it's It's water-based perfume spray. That's for more if I'm leaving in the evening or in the afternoon and I'm feeling a bit gross before I get home and shower. I'll just spray a little bit of this, but again, avoid using this kind of thing in the changing rooms so that we can avoid any incidents with anyone that has any allergies or has any difficulties breathing under any circumstances. So that's really what I've got in my kind of, you could call the toiletry bag, and that really sums up in total the contents of my main bag that I'll be bringing with me in show week. I do have a couple of other bags, one of them being, these are a bit more teaching oriented, so one of them being this lovely tote bag I got given recently by the other teachers in the school as a birthday gift, and it's massive, so it can fit lots in here. And in here I basically keep a sound bar. Often students want to practice backstage or they want to practice in the auditorium while other people are doing technical rehearsals, so this is a really great thing to be able to have to hand so that we can play their showpiece musics and they can practice backstage where needed. We personally have teacher t-shirts, so mine's in my bag and I can, you know, put it on when I need to. I try not to be wearing it all the time, especially if I'm dancing on stage. Leg warmers, really, really useful, especially if you're on and off, on and off, on and off. It helps avoid injury, keeping your muscles warm. I have in here as well some props and some small costume bits. I keep it separate from my very packed bag so I avoid damaging them. My costumes I bring separately. Fresh ballet tights for the show because those get dirty very easily. And then remaining from there, I simply have a notebook for any opportunity that I need to have where I need to write something down, and then I have a file folder in here containing a lot of information regarding the structure of our rehearsals, you know, and you know, makeup needs, costume changes, things like that. So that's what I keep in my tote bag, and that, you know, is where I'll likely put your jumpers and things like that to stay warm, and it's really easy for me to kind of grab and go. And then finally, because I am a crazy bag lady, I then have a smaller tote bag which contains all my personal belongings, and that includes things that I likely won't need as a teacher but I like to have on hand regardless, and that includes more tissues, personal wet wipes, hand sanitizer, purse, books, earphones, pens and chewing gum, and personal medications like my asthma inhaler, things like that. It's really good to have in a smaller bag so you can just grab it if it's really important. You can make sure it's kept safe and you can zip it up and make sure it's tucked safely elsewhere. And then the last thing that we have, which also tends to go in my big holdall but it kind of floats around, which is why I left it to last, is my emergency kit. If you are taught by me, you'll have seen this loads. I used to bring this with me to competitions, and it's really useful. It's got this great hook that allows us to hang it up, and that's what it looks like when I unroll it. So I've got 4 compartments here. First being aerosols. Again, avoid them when I can, but some things are just necessary in aerosol function. So this is what I carry around with me backstage. So if I don't have my whole holdall with me, I try and make sure I've got, you know, the really key items in here with me. So I've got a miniature hairspray, I have rosin spray for point shoes specifically, but it can be useful for flats if we've got particularly slippy floor, and a spray on hand sanitizer where I can just reach out and spray onto my kids' hands, and it's much easier than having one of those gloopy gel ones. In another pocket I have spare feminine hygiene products. Really important, especially when you've got a dance school full of teenage girls. You never know when someone's going to need one. I also have Tiger Balm in the white version to avoid any colour transfer onto costumes, and this one's really great for muscle pain, headaches as well. Obviously as teachers we aren't allowed to provide any medicine to any students under the age of 18 without specific consent from the parents, so we avoid that at all costs, but this is a purely topical treatment and it's really useful. And then a really general thing that would be great to have is some plasters for blisters. Then in another section I have what I call kind of like my costume rescue section, where I have some sewing scissors, I have spare hairpins, I have loads and loads of safety pins in case of any last minute breakages. I have a miniature screwdriver. This seems a bit odd, but it's really useful for tap shoes. If the taps come loose, it's really easy just to quickly grab this and screw them on a bit tighter. And then I also have some super glue for any last minute prop breakages or costume damage or whatever that needs a quick fix. Obviously we have the sewing kit, but sometimes things are a bit too quick and we have to be kind of thinking on our feet with things like that. And then in the final section, which is like a miniature toiletry catch-all, is another pack of tissues. I bring a couple of like creams, hand creams, body creams. These are helpful, I think, if you get a bit dried out hands. Stage burns common, so these can sometimes be really helpful. Once the initial stage burn is dealt with, it still leaves dry skin. It can be a bit uncomfortable, so those are really helpful to have. And that also applies to, I've got a little hand balm and a little lip balm as well. I also bring floss, weirdly, dropping it, weirdly, not necessarily for the teeth, although I guess it's useful if we're eating while we're rehearsing. You don't want to be caught with food in your teeth while you're on stage, but equally, it's a really nifty alternative to cotton string when tying your ribbons and your elastics onto your point shoes, as it's cheaper than cotton, but it's also more durable. So it's a bit of a nifty hack that I have, where if maybe someone's shoes are repeatedly breaking, we'll use this instead of cotton to sew their ribbons back on, and normally that does the trick. This one's more for me personally if I'm going to do a student's hair or makeup last minute in a change, is some minty breath spray, because no one likes having anyone with stinky breath breathing in their face. I have a very small rollerball water-based perfume again, and again avoiding aerosols, so that's really good, especially if you're feeling like it's a bit stinky in the changing rooms. And then finally, wet wipes. I personally love wet ones, because they smell really good and they're really cheap and affordable and easy to get at Boots, for example, or Superdrug. So I've got a couple of packets of those, and then I have some purely cleaning antibacterial wipes, which are really good for surfaces. We have loads of people going through our changing rooms. We're doing 2 different shows with mini kids under the age of, it's something of like 7 or 6, and they can get a bit messy in there, so if there is makeup on surfaces or anything like that, it's really useful to have something to clean up with. So that is everything that I have currently that I'll be bringing with me in show week. Obviously things like food are going to be self-explanatory. You need to kind of think ahead and think, okay, how long are we going to be in the studio for? How long are we going to be in the theatre? Do I need lunch? Do I need dinner? Do I need to bring both? Water bottle, really key. I'll be bringing a water bottle, and sometimes a thermos is really good, not necessarily for hot drinks, but if you want a really, really cold drink to last you a long time, would really recommend bringing something like that. So making sure that we're hydrated, that we're healthy, and that we have everything that we could need. So I really hope this was helpful. I know it came highly recommended and highly requested, so I hope this is somewhat useful, and I look forward to using it all and seeing you all in show week.